Exactly. Okay, it's great to see everyone, and thank you for being available on relatively short notice as well. We really appreciate your time, so I'll do my best to just try to keep everything moving. Let me see. Okay, we have all of our nominees here for the hearing. We have Councilors Flynn and Bach. Is that it for councilors? Okay. And then we have some reps who I'm sure will introduce folks. Carrie, anything, is Carrie or Candace on this hearing?
Good morning, Carrie.
Hey, Carrie. Okay, anything else that I need to know before we dive in?
No, we're good to go when you are.
Okay, let me just pull up all of the magic words we have to say in the beginning, and then I'll be good to go. Okay, I'm all set and ready whenever you are.
All right, here we go.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Boston City Council's Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation. My name is Michelle Wu, and I am chair of this committee. I'm pleased to be welcoming everyone for a hearing on dockets number 0109, 0110, and 0125, which I will read into the record shortly. First, I want to recognize and thank my colleagues on the City Council for joining us, Councilor Ed Flynn and Councilor Kenzie Bach. I'm sure others will join and I'll introduce them as they arrive. I also want to remind everyone that this is a public hearing being recorded and broadcast live on the City of Boston's website and the City Council's YouTube page. It will be rebroadcast on Comcast 8, RCN 82, and Verizon 964 at a later date. We will take public testimony at our hearing as well. If you're interested in testifying, please email juan.lopez@boston.gov for the link and follow along on the live stream to know when it's your turn to speak. Please state your name and affiliation and residence and limit your comments to a few minutes to ensure that all comments and concerns can be heard. So again, I'm going to read all of the official language into the record. Today's hearing is on dockets number 0109, message and order for the confirmation of the appointment of Sherry Dong as a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals for a term expiring July 1st, 2021, which was referred to the committee on November 18th, 2020. Docket number 0110, message and order for the confirmation of the appointment of Bethany Patten as a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals for a term expiring July 1, 2021, referred to committee on November 18th, 2020. And last but not least, docket number 0125, message and order for the confirmation of the appointment of Michael P. Monahan as a member of the Boston Redevelopment Authority for a term expiring August 23rd, 2023, referred to committee on January 25th, 2021. These matters were sponsored by Mayor Martin J. Walsh. Okay, so let's dive in. We will go in that same order as the dockets were filed, unless any of our nominees has a time constraint, in which please feel free to let me know. And we'll proceed, I think, organization by organization. We'll do the DBA first and then the BRA board, and that way we can ask questions sort of across each of those from my colleagues. So let's see, is it Commissioner Irish who will be introducing the first batch?
I'd be happy to do so. So good morning, Madam Chair, also Councilor Bach and Councilor Flynn. Good morning, City of Boston. It gives me great pleasure to introduce these two wonderful, amazing candidates. Ms. Sherry Dong was appointed by the mayor to fill the full-time neighborhood organization seat. She currently serves as the co-moderator for the Chinatown Neighborhood Council. Ms. Dong has been very active in the community for many years, promoting community engagement, community health, advocating for cultural and linguistic access to healthcare. And I think she'd be a wonderful candidate subject to your confirmation. Also to fill the alternate position, Mayor Walsh has appointed Bethany Patten. Ms. Patten currently serves as the president of the Bay Village Neighborhood Association. She's a subject matter expert in climate change and the implementation of social and environmentally sustainable strategies in public and private sectors. So I urge this honorable body to act favorably on these two appointments, and they're both here with us today, and I'm sure that they could provide much more detail to explain why they're such good fits and such talented individuals that would certainly be beneficial to Zoning Board of Appeal.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. So let's go, maybe we'll start with Ms. Dong and then Ms. Patten. If you could just introduce yourself briefly and just describe what your focus and interest would be in serving on this board. And then after you each have spoken, then I'll go to colleagues for questions.
Sure. Good morning. My name is Sherry Dong. Nice to see everyone. Councillor Wu, thank you. Councillors Flynn and Bach, thank you. I am honored to be nominated for a position on the ZBA. I've been serving the Chinatown community since I was an undergraduate in the early 1990s, with Greater Boston Legal Services, advocating for low income, limited English speaking residents of the community, focusing on employment issues, housing, discrimination, et cetera. My professional career has also focused on serving those less underserved in the community, in the Civil Rights Division, the Attorney General's office, in the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Services, and of course in my current role, working on community health issues and disparities. I joined, while I only joined the Neighborhood Council in Chinatown in 2012, through my civic engagement over the past 20 plus years, have also been involved with them both from the city perspective, et cetera, and so have a very broad knowledge of the community from my different roles. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Patten?
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Councillor Wu, Councillor Flynn, Councillor Bach. It's great to see you guys. And I'm really, I sort of have to echo what Sherry said. I'm just honored to be here today. I think there's sort of two things that I've been thinking about. One was, there was a call last year to add more to the board in terms of people who have experience with environmental and sustainability backgrounds. And so when I saw that, I just, it just piqued my interest, and I was just really excited to see that was being considered as an option. I'm not being nominated to fill that position. I'm being nominated to fill the neighborhood association position. And I think what I've really enjoyed as being the president of the Bay Village Neighborhood Association is that the community engagement process is just essential. And also it's the voices are just not always being heard. I think one of the things that we really benefit from in Bay Village is that we have a really engaged group of members, and with a really diverse set of professional backgrounds that give us kind of the time to be able to consider projects in ways that other neighborhoods might not. And that's really illuminated to me over the last 3 years that we just need to figure out a way to engage people more in the process. And it's not only because some people have more time and more expertise, but just that some people just aren't aware of the way that development can affect communities and neighborhoods. And especially as we think about where the city is going to be going in the future and how we're going to recover from the last year, there's going to be a lot of talk about economy and how we're going to preserve the economy. And I worry a little bit about how we're also going to be thinking about communities and the environment. So I'm really excited to be considered for this, because I think I bring this perspective of both, what it means to be in a neighborhood and to be part of a process, but also what are the bigger things that we need to consider. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you both. Let's start with Councillor Flynn for questions.
Thank you, Councillor Wu and Commissioner Irish, for the introductions, and to Sherry Dong and to Bethany Patten as well. I had the opportunity to work with both Sherry and Bethany for several years now on issues impacting the Bay Village and the downtown community and the Chinatown community. And working with Sherry, we focused a lot on Asian women's health, and we also did a lot of public health outreach to residents, and she did a tremendous job on public health related issues. And she knows development as well, and she has a good She has a good relationship with the community, but also she's very respectful and lets people interact during meetings that she chairs. So she's very, very professional, as is Bethany Patten at the Bay Village Neighborhood Association. It's an active and engaging community, and they have an outstanding civic group, but what I like about them is they run meetings professionally, but also Bethany gives people an opportunity to be heard, both sides, whether you're for something or you're against something. So she's very professional and has a great temperament, great background and experience, as does Sherry. So I have no further questions, Councilor Wu, and I think the two outstanding nominations.
Councilor Flynn, your good day for your district, right? Seeing both of these nominees coming up. Councilor Bach.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And similarly, I'm really, thrilled to see both of you nominated, obviously. So Bay Village is in Councilor Flynn's district, but it's where I grew up. So deeply familiar with the Bay Village Neighborhood Association, used to be its planning co-chair, and really appreciate Bethany's leadership and friendship as a neighbor. And Bethany, I think you'd be fantastic on this board. And Sherry, we don't know each other well, but your reputation and work really precedes you. And I think that it's important. In particular, I think Chinatown has experienced a history of not having its voice heard, and of having planning and zoning and project decisions that kind of run roughshod over the residential neighborhood and over the voices of the folks who live there. So I think that thinking about how to have somebody who's steeped in that community and its history on the Board of Appeals is a great move forward. So I was going to ask things that they answered already. So I guess one question that we do try to ask all nominees for the ZBA, because of transparency and sort of our desire to kind of move things forward on the transparency front, is just whether there are types of cases or cases related to anything in particular that you would expect to recuse yourself from consideration of.
Sure, I can answer that for myself. And it's certainly something I brought up to Dion, Commissioner Irish, as we were discussing this possibility. So obviously I work at an institution that is in the Chinatown community. And so I would make sure that I recuse myself and or work closely with ISD to ensure that I am taking the proper precautions and role and accordingly. So that, I think that would be the primary potential conflict.
You want me to go?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. I think on my side, there's, I've thought a lot about this. I think there's two places where I just need to be really careful. One is obviously just any work that I've been doing with Bay Village and any kind of development projects that I've worked on in the past. I think my understanding is that I'll resign from the Bay Village Neighborhood Association. We actually have a new president now, so I'm the vice president. So I would resign from the Neighborhood Association for sure. And then any projects that I've been working on over the 3 years, take a careful look at, and probably would recuse myself from those as well. There's one other piece where I think, this could just be perceived, it could be real, but I think it's just important for us to think about, is that we do have a group of donors and advisory board members for at the Sloan School where I work. And some of them are engaged in development projects, mostly not in Boston, but occasionally they have projects that are here in the city. So I can think of one right now where I would definitely recuse myself from, just because I was asked a question about what does sustainable development look like for that project. And I think that automatically puts me in a place where I have some interest. And then finally, we do engage a lot of companies and organizations around Boston in one of the classes that I teach. And so I am often sort of asked to be in a consultant role for those, not paid, obviously I'm the teacher, but to the extent that there might be some kind of project that is coming out of one of those classes or one of those organizations, I would certainly recuse myself from that as well.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you to both of you and for those thoughtful answers and your willingness to serve. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Bach. So the only question I'll toss in is actually, I think, in some ways less relevant because you both have such a neighborhood organization steeped background, but oftentimes my angle is to make sure that those coming before the council to join the board really understand the dynamic between our system and how sometimes it feels to, especially to residents, that the ZBA becomes the last backstop against ways in which those projects don't necessarily fit together with other projects in the neighborhood, et cetera, et cetera. And it's stressful for everyone when we are often looking at things one by one, as opposed to kind of through a citywide or neighborhood-wide master plan and how everything is interconnected. So just in your role, coming with that background from the neighborhood side, and particularly to fill this seat designated for the neighborhood representative as a member and alternate, how do you think about that balance now that you would be on the board?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think you bring up a really good point, a point that we bring up often as members of the neighborhood association, where it would be beneficial for us to have things in context of bigger pictures. And so it is a little bit hard from our end. And I don't know if there's anything that can be done from the city end to make it a little bit more transparent and holistic so that you could actually see things that are in the pipeline and not before they're officially filed. Because I guess that's the process now, right? Like there's a lot of rumor mill stuff, you hear it, but until it's filed, we aren't really, from a community perspective, I guess, allowed to weigh in on it or factor it into other already filed projects. And so it does make it a little bit challenging from the community side, honestly. And so I don't know if ZBA has that kind of a role to affect that, or if that's sort of a city council role or city hall role, but that certainly would be beneficial from the community side, I guess, to be able to see things in a bigger context and not have them come one at a time. So it's something I'm mindful of for sure.
Thank you.
I totally agree with you, Sherry, that, trying to be on top of every single project all the time is just impossible. And so, to the extent that there could be more transparency and not just kind of reading rumor mills, it would be really incredible to consider things holistically. I would add that I think, the city is at an inflection point right now for many, in many different ways, right? Whether it's just recovery or it's, recovery from a virus or recovery from the racial divide or whatever it is, there may have been a master plan, and maybe it's time to be thinking a little bit differently about a master plan. So where I see us kind of playing a role in knitting the community together would be to just emphasize that, we have new considerations, we have new people we need to be thinking about. We need to be thinking about more people and asking the questions, when we're considering cases of, who was asked and do they understand the larger context, and making sure that, that we really, I don't know if this is just about being good community members and kind of pushing to understand what the city is thinking about for the future and how we want to rebuild, and which of the pieces of the zoning code may, need to be reconsidered given that we're in this inflection point. I don't know how much of the board has a role in shaping that, but I think we can, when we ask questions, we can sort of, make people raise awareness of this stuff. So, so that's one piece of my answer. And the other piece of my answer is just, to the extent that we can get out there and see, what these communities are facing when we're considering projects, that's really what I am interested in doing. I know Bay Village and I know the areas here, but I don't know some of the other parts of the city. And so I'm really interested in hearing from those community members and seeing, where projects are being considered and what impact they actually might have. So, you can only really make decisions when you look at things on the ground. And I think that's how we figure out how to involve the community better.
very much. Oops, I see that Councillor Sabi George is in the waiting room. I'm sorry, Councillor, let me make sure to add you. Okay. So welcome, Councillor Sabi George. You'll be next for questions for our two ZBA nominees. I just have one more for Commissioner Irish, which is if Commissioner, you could just give us a quick update. Last we had talked formally through these channels. We were discussing the backlog of cases due to the pandemic and meetings being canceled. What is the current situation there? And could you just remind us now of the overall makeup of the board in terms of what additional vacancies, if any, still exist?
Thanks. So I'll start with the last part of the question. Should these two fine candidates be confirmed, then there'd only be one remaining vacancy on the board. So I want to thank you and thank the entire council for all the work that you've done in the past year to get us this many members. We haven't had this many members on the board probably forever. So we'd only have one vacancy. Relative to the backlog that related to COVID-19, over the summer, we switched obviously to virtual hearings, and we started to do weekly hearings. And then we backed off of doing weekly hearings, but we added additional hearings each month. And so I'm happy to announce that at the end of last year, we actually eliminated all the COVID-19 related backlogs. So we're currently on a regular schedule now, and we're also very pleased that we've been able to sort of lighten the agenda to a certain degree. We're still tweaking it, but we're now scheduling about 35 cases in hearing, and I think it's giving the board more time just to have meaningful conversations and allow more voices to be heard. Obviously, there are some cases that take up more time than on the agenda than others, but it's something that we're constantly monitoring and making adjustments to. And I also want to just touch on some of the things that were mentioned by the nominees relative to transparency and information. One of the things that we've been doing here at ISD is to just do a better job of capturing the information that's coming out of our hearings, and also just honestly also capturing information projects that don't go to the ZBA because they're as of right. So we could work with our colleagues at the Planning and Development Agency. So they have more information to understand how our zoning is working and maybe areas where it needs to be tweaked, but also more importantly, to make sure that we're being as transparent as possible and folks are aware of projects that are in the ZBA pipeline. And last week we launched our ZBA tracker. So if you guys haven't checked that out, go to our website. There's a new ZBA tracker that allows you to see projects that are in our pipeline. And we plan to continue to improve that over time. So we welcome any feedback you may have.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you for all of your hard work in getting us through this pandemic and catching up on all of the burden that was on your department. Councillor Sabi George, questions for Sherry Dong or Bethany Patten?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to Sherry and Bethany for being here with us. I'm really excited about your applications, your being presented before us today. I think it's really fabulous when we have members of our community who are actively engaged in our community being recommended as members of the board. So excited about both applications and happy to be here. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, oh sorry, Councillor Flaherty is in the waiting room. So we were almost done for these two. Councillor Flaherty, welcome. We were just wrapping questions for the two ZBA nominees, Sherry Dong and Bethany Patten. So you're up if you have anything for them.
Very good. No, I support the chair's recommendation. So happy to support the appointments and reappointments that are on today's agenda. Thank you very much.
Okay, last call for any other questions for ZBA nominees.
Councilor Wu, I just had a quick question for Commissioner Irish.
Go for it, Councilor Flynn.
Commissioner, there's one left. There's one appointment still that needs to be made for ZBA.
Yeah, there's one vacant slot for alternate neighborhood organization.
Okay. Are you guys looking now to fill that?
Yeah, the mayor's constantly fielding candidates. So I wouldn't be surprised if something came forward on that, but we're really in a very good place. You know, we have 7 full members now, and now, you know, with their approval, we'll have 6 alternates. So we're in the best place we've been in decades.
So, okay, so when you have a regular member that's not there, an alternate can't fit in, so going forward, you should not have any, there should always be ZBA hearings, because we do have plenty of people now that are able to fulfill those roles. That's accurate?
That's accurate. And also, if folks need to recuse themselves from meetings, then we have adequate backup. So we're very happy.
Okay, good information. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. I thought he was going to make a push to get a 3rd person from his district into that vacant spot as well. So Commissioner, just to clarify on that, so when there's an absence or a conflict for that particular seat, for example, for the neighborhood organization seat, which does not have an alternate attached to it, then it is just whoever's available from one of the other alternate spots?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so that it's not that person doesn't have any backup as we are.
No, there's adequate backup for everyone. So folks, you know, it's last summer we were in a space where we're trying to have weekly meetings, and it was beginning to be a challenge with the number of board members that we had, and some folks needed to take time off. But now, should we see a situation like that again, we would be in a much better space to ensure we had a full 7-member board sitting.
Great. Well, I think that's it for ZBA. So we thank you, Commissioner. We thank Ms. Dong and Ms. Patten, and we will look to take action on your nominations at this week's City Council meeting. So thank you for your time. And we will shift to BRA board. So I believe if our Executive Secretary, Executive Director, Teresa Polhemus could give us the introduction, please.
Sure. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Teresa Polhemus, and I'm the Executive Director Secretary of the Boston Planning and Development Agency. And I'm joining you this morning to introduce Michael Monahan, who is Mayor Walsh's nominee to serve as 2nd term on the BPDA board. Mr. Monahan has served on the BPDA board since 2013 and currently serves as Vice Chairman. He serves as the International Vice President of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, representing over 40,000 members in New England. And he is a 4th generation member of Local 103 and began his career in 1983 as an inside apprentice wireman. He has served in many roles in Local 103, including executive board member and business manager. It's my pleasure to introduce Mike for your consideration.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Monahan, if you could just feel free to introduce yourself, although you already had a little bit of an introduction, and just maybe your reason for wanting to be reappointed to the board, and the what role you see yourself playing among the board.
Very good. Yes. Thank you, Secretary Polhemus. Good morning, Madam Chair, Council Wu, and committee members, councilors. As introduced by Secretary Polhemus, my name is Michael Monahan, and respectfully appear before you as being appointed as the enabling legislation requires that seat that I sit on from organized labor. As mentioned, I'm a 4th generation electrician, member of Local 103, and elected to the position of business manager like my father and grandfather, representing our members for the purpose of improving their wages, benefits, and working conditions. I'm also a 4th generation Dorchester resident. My union was formed in the 1890s at the birth of organized labor in this country, in Boston as well, in a hall at 724 Washington Street, around the corner from our family home on Talbot Ave. My great-grandfather was one of the first founders of our local union, 103. And since coming to this country over 100 years ago, every male Monahan has only had one occupation in the United States, and that is an electrician and being a member of Local 103, something we're very proud of. I've had the pleasure of serving for 2 mayors, as a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals, being appointed by Mayor Menino in 2000, serving until 2013, before being appointed to the BRA board in August of 2013. Mayor Walsh, as mentioned, has reappointed me to serve on the board in the seat from organized labor. I'm currently in my 21st year making decisions based on what I felt was in the best interest of the residents and the city of Boston at whole with respect to development. I've not taken that responsibility lightly. These decisions can have lifelong changing effect on neighborhoods, neighbors, residents of our city, decisions weighing the positive and negatives. And it's something that I just don't just make a minute's notice. I give it a lot of thought. Displacement, protecting our neighborhoods for those residents is something that you always consider or should consider, but also at the same time versus jobs for our residents and apprentice programs for our youth, to starting a rewarding career in construction, providing good wages and benefits in a career that they can take them throughout their career. And within the building trades, many don't know it's a free education. We finance our own training. Weighing additional traffic versus additional tax revenue for our teachers, first responders, and the city services that we enjoy and sometimes maybe take for granted. Decisions in existing dwellings, approving additional units, reducing precious parking spots versus having families provide much needed affordable housing for an elderly parent or a young adult to help that person move on. If approved by this committee, I will continue to understand the votes that I take have real life impacts on those living in close proximity and to the residents of our great city. I'm available to answer any questions anyone might have. Thank you, Councilor Wu, and the rest of the committee members.
Thank you very much. So we'll go in order of arrival to councilors. And I just want to note, Sherry and Bethany, feel free to stay if you would like. You are welcome, but also we recognize you're very busy, so we won't need you for the rest of the hearing. So just in case you have other things you would like to be doing, feel free as well.
Thank you.
Okay, so Councilor Flynn.
Thank you, Councilor Wu, and thank you, Michael, for your willingness to serve the residents of Boston again. Want to say thank you to you and your family, Michael, for generations, helping build the middle class, really, for so many families and residents of our city. You know, getting into the building trades, getting into a good occupation with decent wages, healthcare, and the training opportunities. So I want to say thank you to the Monahan family. I know many of them, but they've done a tremendous job in our city, helping people become a member of the middle class. So I want to say acknowledge that, and say thank you to you, Michael, as well. Michael, my question is, you know, and I'm looking forward to supporting your nomination. My question is, over the last year during the pandemic, how impacted was, I guess I'll take the opportunity, how impacted was construction impacted because of the slowdown? And once the vaccinations take place, maybe I'm speaking a little out of off the subject, but I just want to get a sense from you as a labor leader. When can we start getting these jobs back on track?
Well, thank you, Councilor Flynn. As with your family, I'm aware of 3 generations that have always worked towards helping the residents of Boston and working people in general. And we're fortunate to live in a city like Boston. I'm not being presumptuous here, but I think everyone here is a Democrat and always tries to help any way we can, and the city can do what it can within reason to help the common good and so on and so forth. The pandemic has been devastating to so many people, from just, you know, health, of course, and those that have passed from it, and families that have been affected by it, and those not being able to visit loved ones in nursing homes and so on and so forth. So I don't discount that, but yes, in construction, we continue to learn. We continue to try and make it all work with existing bids these projects were bid long before the pandemic, and nobody could have anticipated the social distancing that is difficult on productivity. Nobody could have anticipated the remote working. We currently, it's all public information, which I do read an awful lot of business journals, et cetera. I think we're approaching 3 million square feet of available space, and nobody's really sure how much of that is going to come back. People are going to be working remotely, I think, for a good portion of the workforce is going to be working remotely. What impact does that have on future office, commercial, and construction, and the impact it has on our tax base, not to mention the small businesses that these people would travel into the city and do a fair amount of shopping and restaurants. And so we're still waiting, I think, for the other shoe to fall, but it's been devastating to us. My local union, which I'm always the closest to, of course, we currently have about 800 people out of work who were not out of work in March 1st of last year. So it went up as high as 3,000 and 4,000 during that period where we shut things down. And it's important in construction, we don't have paid vacations, we don't have paid holidays, we don't have sick days, and you either work or you don't get paid. So thank God for, of course, unemployment insurance and what the federal government did with that additional $600 helped a lot of people. Because even in my trade, you can go work in somebody's house maybe that's been dying to get that receptacle, that ceiling fan, but they didn't want you in their home either. So it was a light switch, no pun intended, being shut off when this pandemic hit. And but the mayor has done, I think, a great job at, and Commissioner Irish as well, getting on job sites, providing or mandating that the proper hand washing and spacing and so on and so forth. So the jury, I think, is still out on what comes on the other side of this. But yeah, so I hope I answered it probably too long, Eddie. But no. It's had a devastating impact on everyone, but certainly in construction. We don't know. For instance, I think a lot of the building trades are not having apprentice classes this year because of the unemployment. So there's a generation. You were March 1st of 2020. You were anticipating graduating and entering into an apprentice program of whatever trade you wanted to pick. And that was, that didn't happen. And now we're going into another possible year of less people because there's less work and so on and so forth. So it can be generational. It can be, and has been. So pray this vaccine gets out and we get back to a new normal and a newer normal, which is closer to what was normal.
Thank you, Michael. Councilor, do I have a quick comment, not a question, but a quick comment?
Yes, you have all the time you need. Okay.
I just wanted to let the members know that I had the opportunity to live in Gulfport for a period of time in Mississippi. It was the home base of the Navy Seabees, and they provide a tremendous training program on various occupations, sheet metal and electricity and carpentry. And a lot of the young men and women that go to that program in Gulfport serve in the Navy, and then they come back, but they go to a lot of the building trades in the 103, or they go to local 17 or 7, but the building trades and the working men and women really play a critical role in our city. Many of them are veterans, many of them are women, and I just want to say thank you to the various unions across Greater Boston that really help people get into the middle class. I guess that was my point. So I have no further questions, Council. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. Councilor Bach had informed me that she needs to, she wants us to come back to her in the lineup. So let me see I don't see Councilor Sabi George here anymore. Councilor Flaherty.
Good morning, Councilor Wu. Proud to support the candidacy of Michael Monahan. I've known him a long time. Obviously, I'm the longest serving councilor on the council, and find him to be extremely thorough and thoughtful whenever I've appeared in front of the board. Always ask the right and tough questions, but more importantly, has subject matter acumen that I think has been superior over the years. And so while we don't always agree on some of those decisions, which is obviously par for the course, but it's one of those things when you're up there, he's most knowledgeable and can engage in a debate and a dialogue, and obviously makes a decision which he feels is in the best interest of the city based on his vantage point. So, and for obviously the work that he's done in the building trades over the years, and the attention to detail as it pertains to development and its quality in the city, I would argue has been superb. And also the role that 103 has played in our communities, as referenced by my colleague, Councilor Flynn. And it's been a backstop for a lot of kids and a lot of families in the city to obtain middle class, and some have gone beyond that. So it's been a great asset to have in our city and our community, 103. And I know that he looks out not just for 103, but he looks out for all the men and women in the trades and beyond. So it's proud to support your recommendation, and we'll be supporting his candidacy for reappointment. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. So I'll take the time for a few of my questions and then turn back to Councilor Bach. Mr. Monahan, could you, I mean, you've now been involved with the city and our permitting and planning and development processes for so many years. Now returning to this role, what are the ways you think that the BRA, whether just the board itself or the organization as a whole, should be thinking about doing differently to get us out of this pandemic, or just sort of thinking about the direction that the economy and the future is going? What are some of the changes that you might think about, whether in your role as a board member or just in general from what you've seen and learned?
Well, I think the mayor and all the elected officials in the city have done a great job, and we continue to learn. Just think about what we know today versus St. Patrick's Day 2020, when this kind of exploded. And, we've gone from, masks, no masks, and, it's been difficult for everybody. And sometimes you people as elected officials are expected to know everything. And that's not practical. Nobody could have, unless you were around 100 years ago, you can't think of everything. But I think the challenges that the board has moving forward, and we're very fortunate in the city, because I do now have in this my new role, not just my Boston role, we're fortunate in the city to have these economic engines. We have numbers of economic engines that complement each other. We are not Hartford, Connecticut, that had all their eggs in the insurance basket, and the insurance industry decided to do something different, and Hartford was left naked. It's now what? New Haven has Yale, but Hartford does not have much to really get it going. So I get to see these other places around New England and around the country, and we really are fortunate. The education, the hospitals, the biomedical, even travel and tourism and financial. So where I'm going with that is we're fortunate, getting back to Council Flynn, I guess, linkage with his father, I think, started it, was we're able to get an awful lot from these developers. And now, it's cost so much to build a square foot. It's numbers that developers know what it costs. These benefits that we've been getting are costly. And are we on this vector of expecting X, which was great under a different economy, and now we're in a whole different world expecting the same? And is it to the point where maybe the projects don't happen? As you've heard me say a couple of times, I think, Councilor, 70% of zero is zero. So we can have all the language that looks wonderful, but if nothing gets developed, there is no affordable housing, there is no linkage, there's nothing. It all reads well in Boston. This is what we expect from our developers. But if nothing gets developed, we don't get anything. So I think that is the challenge, that one, in the board's position, and you people as councilors and elected officials and maybe beyond, I think that's the biggest challenge that we have in this city, is not to squeeze so tight that there's no development. And again, as I said, I think I'm correct. It's in different business magazines and stuff. 2 to 3 million square feet that's either available or about to be available or on the subprime right now. And so financing, as we saw down at the Millennium Project, making these deals work is tricky. And that's where I think we are, that we don't slip back into a hole in the ground like we had at Filene's, and so on and so forth. So the board's got its challenges. Elected officials have their challenges because they have to represent the neighborhoods and the city that overall, if they're at large. And it's that, I think we're close to being at that point. We'll see how we get through it.
Great. And I know just for my part, as an individual counselor and someone who's been on this committee for a while, just seeing the way that planning and development kind of get collapsed into each other, I will continue to reiterate, I believe it sometimes leads to us having to then address the impact, sometimes unintended impacts afterwards of traffic, of climate vulnerability, of for example, in the seaport, not having the transportation or resiliency linked in there as tightly. What are your views about separating planning and development, or empowering planning more distinctly from development?
I'm not trying to understand the question, Council, but so I still occasionally call it the BRA, the BPDA. They have a job. They have a difficult job to do. One, to keep developing the city, to keep it moving. But at the same time, in economics, we're familiar with foreign countries. They call it dumping. So you could have a very rich developer throw another 1 million square feet of office space on the market. What that does to developers who already have vacant space, depends who can afford it more, they're going to have to drop their price per square foot if they want to rent it. But that wasn't figured into the equation on getting their financing. And there's numbers and numbers of office buildings around this country right now being foreclosed on. And it's not good. So the authority has the balancing act to approve more commercial office space at a time when there's 3 million square feet possibly available, or approve a hotel when occupancy rate in hotels might be at 30%. It's not wise to do that. It's not wise in all of our part just to build a building. And I'm in construction. Sometimes we want to build, of course, but it's not the right time to build because the long-term effects it's going to have on costs and rents and everything else would be counterproductive looking down the road. To have empty office buildings, which some cities do for decades, Hartford again, they have vacant 30-story buildings. A 30-story building, I shouldn't say. There's not a lot of high rises there. The building's vacant. And we weren't always there, but we've been through that. I remember 28 State Street. Some of the older guys would call it the Merchants Bank building when they built it. But a good portion of that building was empty in 1995, I think it was. And it was empty for a few years there. And then they decided to remove all the asbestos. So it was a good time. There wasn't many people in there. And then renovate it, and then things turned around. But the authority's got a balancing act to do, and they've got to listen to residents, and they got to listen to the development world, and they have to listen to the construction unions, and they make decisions based on long-term effects. I remember Mayor Flynn at the time, they built One International Place. We had vacant office spaces everywhere. Shafaro they had a crystal ball or whatever. He built that building. By the time they put the last piece of glass in, the economy just turned, and he ended up renting that whole building, like not overnight, but people thought he was crazy. We were glad he was building it because things were horrible in construction, and it was under Mayor Flynn. But they saw something we didn't, and that's their job, you know. So it's a balancing act.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bach?
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm so sorry that I had to step away for a moment. Mr. Monahan, I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to, I think you referenced it briefly, but obviously I think we all, we're all very supportive of the Building Pathways program and kind of interested in how to both diversify the trades and critically get Boston residents, right, into those good paying jobs that you talked about. And the numbers keep not being quite where we want them to be, to say the least. And I guess one concern I have is, as you discussed, like with the economic impacts and for sort of more folks out of work, if folks are leaving off their apprentice classes, if that's the pipeline in for, you know, getting our city kids into these good paying jobs, then that, you know, could really set us back in terms of making progress. So I wonder what you think about kind of prospects for coming back from the pandemic in a way that sets us up to have more success on that front, and what, if anything, you think that the BPDA board is able to do in reviewing projects to help advance that cause.
Well, certainly through the development process, it's not illegal to weigh. I think that's part of my role. And if you go back and look at the minutes or look at the tapes, I make it quite clear that women get paid the same. Has nothing to do with the union. Women get paid the same on construction sites as men. Whether you are, whatever your ethnicity is, you get paid the same as a white person. And a lot of people are worried or nervous about saying, is it a union project? And it's not, we know where that line is with certain people. But I'm proud to say this, for 20 years, I was in a position of authority, I guess, at Local 103, until accepting this position. And Building Pathways is great. A lot of residents and women minorities come to our programs across the city, not just through Building Pathways. It's great, and it's good. It's becoming more and more popular. But what I'm proud of, for 20 years, there was not one resident, there was not one woman, there was not one minority that applied to Local 103 who passed the test. It's not an electrical test. It's just a state. It's actually the state test. It's not our test. That did not gain entrance into Local 103. And but not everybody wants to be an electrician or an iron worker or so on and so forth. And the other challenging pieces. This goes back. I was still at Local 103 as the business manager, and it was when the Bowling School Committee building was in the process of being. Not the construction hadn't started yet, but a residency was very important to those representatives of that part of the city. And they weren't interested in just Boston residents. They wanted them to be specific residents of geographical area around the building. So we just pull it up by zip and so on and so forth. And we didn't have as many as I thought. And I said, run a 10-year, go back 10 years. You can't make someone stay in a neighborhood once they get accepted into an apprentice program. So I don't care what section you're from, you come into the apprentice program from Grove Hall, and then you say, well, I know, Joe and Jim and Bill, they live in Grove Hall. And you look it up and say, no, they don't live there anymore. They moved. It's like, you can't make people live somewhere forever. And that's one of the challenges the building trades have. They provide an opportunity for that person to make choices, and some of those choices are to move, unfortunately. So it's constant trying to, feed it and keep a sizable amount of our organizations as residents of Boston, seeing that the majority of our development is in Boston. We have the similar challenge in Cambridge. and Somerville, where it's getting as expensive to live in those two places as it is in Boston.
Yeah, no, and sorry, I didn't mean to. And yeah, no, and I appreciate that challenge. I think there has been a push to sort of have more data and transparency on that, partly to help us figure out how to really crack that nut. My one other question for you is just, I was thrilled that, you know, with the support of Mayor Walsh and the council, the IDP linkage home rule petition passed a couple of weeks ago, which is now going to give us the opportunity to enshrine the inclusionary development policy in their zoning code, but also to, you know, look at adjusting the linkage rates. And I couldn't agree with you more about that being this really important program going back to Mayor Flynn. And I think it set up some of that automaticity, right, about like getting funds for both affordable housing and jobs from every development. But the reality is that we haven't adjusted the rate significantly in a long time. And my view, well, I'm sure there will definitely be a balancing act and a question about what's the appropriate level that the market can bear. I think there's no question that it needs to be updated. And I expect that to be something that's running through the council and ultimately coming to the board. So I guess, you know, without of course, like committing you to any specific numbers or anything, I mean, are you of the mind that that those linkage rates need to be revised and that the IDP policy should be encoded in the zoning?
I think it should always be looked at, and how, you know, how can we benefit the people who live here? And but unfortunately, developers don't have a lot of credibility. And you know, if we were talking about 1% affordable housing, they typically would say that it's not doable, right? And here we are at 13 and it's not doable. I thought 1 wasn't doable. Now, you know, here we are here. So they don't have a lot of credibility, but in my day job, it is something that we do all the time, right? Because of the wages and benefits that I'm contractually have to pay your people, my price is 30% higher than my competition. And outside of Boston, where we don't have maybe certain tools or support from elected officials. And so I've gotten to see that my whole career in the office in a leader position, not just as an electrician. That's the challenge. Of course, I support as many affordables as you can get to make the project happen. And so the developer gets paid properly and they get a profit too. It's not a hobby. And so it should always be looked at, but it's a challenge because when you hit it, it's hard to go back. And so when developments, you know, the economy cycles downward, this was kind of nobody saw this one coming, and usually it happens a little slower period, but it's hard to come backwards. Nobody ever wants to say, all right, let's drop it to 10% because development isn't happening. As I said, 13% of X, 0 is 0. 10% of something is more than what you're getting with 13%. But nobody ever wants to go backwards. It's hard as elected officials. You know, you have to answer those questions. And so it should always be looked at, I guess, is my answer, but always cautious of crossing over because it's hard to come back. And when development stops, it just seems to trend. It's hard to get that nose back up.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I do think though that I think there's been a strong consensus in the city about the need to update in a reasonable way the linkage rates to commercial and residential. And it's certainly something that, you know, if reappointed to the board, I'd hope you would support. So
yeah, reasonable is defined differently, obviously, by a lot of people in certain parts of the city. You know, you take the Seaport and what you can get a square foot, so a sale or a rent is much different than other parts of the city. But the electricians make the same, whether it's at the Seaport or somewhere else. So those challenges we internally, in my other hat, we hear those all day long. And where developers say, there's no problem, $5 a square foot, we can afford you guys all day long and make a profit. $250, $260, that's a problem. You guys didn't change a penny. I'm getting half what I was getting at the Seaport. Why do you think there's as much money here as there was there? And they're right. And so that's the challenge that you have. we all have.
No, it's definitely, the economics of it are very complicated. Thank you so much. And thank you, Madam Chair. Those are all my questions.
Thank you, Councilor Bach. Okay, Councilor Flynn, I believe, has no more questions. Let me circle through everyone else one more time. Councilor Flaherty, are you good? I think everyone is all set. Just a question for Director Polimis. In terms of the board and the composition of the board and which seats for which expertise vacancies, could you just give a similar description to what Commissioner Irish had presented before, just for the record?
Sure. So Mr. Monahan's seat is the only one that's specified. The rest can come from any sector of or any neighborhood in the city. The mayor has 4 appointments. The governor has 1 appointment. All of the terms are current. So we don't have anybody who is in an unexpired seat. And the next term is up sometime this fall.
Great. Thank you very much. If no one has any further questions, I think we can wrap a very efficient hearing today, and just thank everyone who joined us and everyone who has participated. I will do one call as well for public testimony, although I'm not seeing anyone in the waiting room. Okay, so this will conclude today's Planning, Development, and Transportation Committee hearing on dockets numbers 0109, 0110, 0125. Thank you very much to Sherry Dong, Bethany Patten, and Mike Monahan for joining us, as well as the administration and BPDA representatives for their helpful background and expertise in addition. All right, thank you so much, and this hearing will be adjourned.
Thank you. Thanks.
Have a great day, everyone.